Welcome, everyone, to the Next Best Picture podcast, where we are talking with Dan Berk and Robert Olsen, the directors of Novocaine. Dan and Robert, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having
Thanks,
us.
man. Happy to be here.
Next best picture. I don't know if Novocaine is going to be the next best picture, but I like the optimism.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that you like that. I mean, look,
Yeah.
this film, whether or not it goes the road of the Oscars, is a ton of fun to watch. You know, I think this is a great date movie. It's a good popcorn movie, and I had so much fun watching it. But I wanted to start with asking you guys, I know this isn't the first thing that you've directed that you haven't written, but mostly I've noticed that you guys tend to direct things that you've also written yourselves. So, what was it that drew you to directing this screenplay?
Yeah, sure. So we were sent this screenplay a while back, and there was just something about the general concept in it that was just so sticky and commercial to us, and yet that original version of it was a little more serious, a little bit more kind of just a down the middle action movie. And so our pitch to come on and direct it was, hey, can we kind of put this through our tonal filter and make it a little bit more comedic, a little bit more heartfelt, and just kind of have more fun with it? Because we felt the special sauce that would really make this movie work is kind of juxtaposing these moments of grisly violence with really funny moments, and moments of genuine heart and friendship and romance. Because without that, the violence might get a little gratuitous. It might be a little much, but because the audience is kind of given permission to laugh through those moments, it makes it so somebody who's even a little squeamish usually can make it through this movie.
Absolutely. Well, mission accomplished on that front. It is the humor. I was laughing constantly through it, as was the audience that I was watching it with. So mission
Oh yeah.
accomplished on that.
Oh, that's great to hear.
And the next thing is that, this central role of Nathan Caine, it very, very tricky one to cast properly, considering all the things that he needs to do, and he needs to be charming enough for everyone to fall in love with him, and he needs to be funny and also be this incredible action star. So I'm curious how you went about casting and what eventually led you to land on Jack Quaid.
Yeah, it was a very fortuitous situation for us because Jack was kind of in our minds from the first moments of us coming out of the project. When we attached to direct, it was sort of under the assumption that we would do, like Bobby mentioned, a bit of a heavy lift rewrite on the script. And whenever we're writing, the two of us kind of, dream cast an actor for all these roles, just so that we're writing, in the same voice. We have to get on the same page, so we're not writing completely different dialogue. And we were watching The Boys at the time, and so obviously we saw Jack as Huey, and he was so perfect. And there's so much of Huey and Nate. They're different in a lot of ways too, but they're similar enough that we were like, this is the guy for this movie. But it is so rare that you make that sort of dreamcast selection and then you actually end up getting to work with that person on the movie. But we took our pass on the script, we sent it to Jack, and he loved it. We hopped on a Zoom, and he is just so charming and sweet that it felt like we had known each other for like 20 years, 5 minutes into the conversation. Like we were like, did we just become best friends? Is this really happening? And he came on, and yeah, I mean, Jack is the perfect Nate because, like you alluded to, you need to be able to handle both the comedy and the drama here. And Jack has this unbelievable range where he's an amazing physical comedian. He's an amazing improviser. He's got this improv troupe, Sasquatch, that he tours with. It's so funny. You should see it if you can. And but on this at the same time, he can sort of bear the weight of the emotional stakes of this movie. It's a love story. Like obviously it's very violent, obviously it's very funny, but it's a love story, and you have to be able to make the audience care, and you have to make the audience invest in you. And Jack is just so like we experienced in our first meeting. He's just so it's easy to immediately fall in love with him, you know, and he kind of is. We always say he's like our generation's next Tom Hanks. It's like the type of actor we don't really have in this kind of class of actors. And you know, we don't have our John Cusack, our Tom Hanks, our really relatable everyman who can slip into roles like that and just allow the audience to kind of map their own experience onto him. And it allows it's this great engine for wish fulfillment, and it just makes for a really satisfying experience watching it.
Yeah, and it's very funny that you say that because I turned to my friend, or actually my friend, the editor of Next Best Picture, Matt,
Mhm.
turned to me at this screening we were at for this movie towards the end, and he's like, "God, he reminds me of Tom Hanks, a young
Yeah,
Tom Hanks." It's
oh
right
yeah,
there.
we've all been saying it.
Yeah. And you mentioned, that he is very experienced improviser and has done a lot of this. How much improvisation did you allow on set?
We always kind of we always try to give some space for improv. We get what's on the page, but then usually once we feel like that we've got that, we would do what Jack liked to call a funsies take, where he would just kind of be able to go off script and say whatever he wanted. We kind of gave everybody that opportunity in the more comedic moments in the movie, and honestly, some of the best stuff came right out of that. I mean, the his asking if the guy is gluten free after hitting him with the flower, that was something he did in the moment that made us all crack up. The torture scene where he's being tortured and has to pretend that he can feel pain, a lot of that was improv, and that scene itself was almost difficult to shoot because of how funny it was. Like, we kept blowing takes because crew members would be laughing, or Dan and I would be laughing and ruin the audio, and so there's a lot on the cutting room floor from that scene, because there's just so much hilarious stuff to choose from. And yet when we're shooting that scene, that was really when we knew that the movie was going to work, because if a whole room full of people who are professionals, who are paid to not laugh and blow takes, are laughing and blowing takes, that it's going to do well with a room full of people who come to a movie wanting to laugh. So that's when we knew we really had something on our hands.
Yeah, I can imagine. And that scene in particular is so funny in the film. I absolutely adored it. And thinking about that, like how many times that he broke you while shooting that scene. What was the most difficult day of shooting?
The most difficult day of shooting. We had a very blessed production on this movie, as we like to think we usually do. We like to run a good set, but we didn't really have any catastrophes. I think, probably the most difficult day was the kitchen fight. The trick about the
Mm.
kitchen fight that made it difficult, outside of the fact that it's, very complex choreography, and a lot of, physicality from Jack and Evan, our Ben, and our stunt performers, was that the resets of the set were incredibly time consuming and arduous, because throughout
Trash it.
the beginning of the fight, you're trashing the whole kitchen. There's a huge rack with all these plates and all this shit, but then they're also throwing actual raw chicken and lettuce that was exploding into the leaves. And then at the end of the fight, we take a bag of flour and explode it, and it gets everywhere. It's like glitter, It's like it just gets all the fuck over the set. And then we call cut. We go, okay, now we have to get it. Now we have to go to flip over, do the other side. And the art team has to come in with mops and and rags and get them off everything. Jack's wardrobe is now covered. Evan's wardrobe is covered. So it was like, that was kind of this like Sisyphusian task of like, when will we get out of this flower hell? But it was very worth it. And it's funny because at a certain point, we thought we were going to have one less day in that location. And Bobby and I made the decision to cut the flower from the fight. And then our producer Drew Simon was like, no, 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 you need the flower. I'm going to give you guys another day there. We're going to figure this out. And we're so happy that we made that decision, because that flower moment is like kind of it's a really kind of pivotal tone setting moment in the movie, because like through, the bank heist is like dead serious and like it's kind of scary. It's very heat, there's like cops getting shot. And then the car chase is like, there's a little bit of levity, but it's still kind of serious. The kitchen fight is the first time you understand the cadence of these fights. You're like, oh, okay, there's going to be like pauses where like the bad guy gets hit with a bag of flour and like backs up and like gives us time for a joke, which like wouldn't happen in like John Wick,
Yeah.
But yeah, we're happy that flower moment's in there. But yeah, that day was a bit of a headache.
Yeah.
And I'm curious how that compared to, like when you're first looking at this script that was written and then that you added to, how that compared to like the thing that you were most nervous about pulling off when you were just in the writing stage.
Yeah, um I think one of the things is just knowing that all the prosthetics that we were going to need, and how many close-ups of wounds and all those things. And, we knew we needed a really top tier special effects makeup team. And luckily, Clinton Smith, our special effects makeup head, he was unbelievable and was just this mad scientist who would be, coming into the production office every day with a new, like, crazy contraption he devised so that it's like this special armband that so Jack could dig in the bullet wound, or like this
Right,
broken bone rig. Yeah, there's like a
the thumb one.
broken the broken thumb thing was remarkable, because it's great, because when those prosthetic effects look good, it allows you to look at them for a little bit longer. You don't have to hide how fake it looks. And so that was the whole thing we wanted to do on this movie, was like hang on the gore a beat longer than maybe you'd usually do, and just kind of, never to, you don't want to gross people out, but obviously like there is a little bit of like body horror sprinkled into this action movie, and if you didn't have absolutely top tier prosthetics, the whole thing would kind of fall apart, and so that was really important to us. But again, you don't know what that's going to look like until you're shooting it. And so it was such a relief when we started to see those prosthetics and those wounds on camera and how awesome they looked. And it just gave us so much freedom in the edit to not have to cut around a bad effect.
Yeah, those prosthetics, that thumb in particular, like wow.
The thumb was like, out of all the like the rigs that Clinton built, the thumb was the one that like made me laugh when like I remember walking
Yeah.
onto set, which was that this little ambulance interior we had built, and you got to step into it, and it was just this like, it was like Frankenstein's monster. It was like this little like 2x4, like it looked like a device you'd use in like an old coal mine or something, and there were all these like weird little wires going to this like strange thing that Jack was wearing,
Well,
and
and then the
he had
hand
to like they
itself,
had to
when
like
like,
pump it to puppet it,
yeah,
like
Wow.
when the skin, like, he would take the skin off it, and it was like in Terminator 2, and he like kind of rips the flesh and shows like his little metal hand
Yeah.
underneath. Like that's what it
Oh
looked
my
like. It was so
gosh.
freaky.
it was
Oh,
just so cool. Yeah, it was awesome having all those practical prosthetics on set.
Yeah.
it's always fun to getting to like see what goes into making the movie magic like that,
Oh yeah.
right? It's so much
Oh yeah.
fun.
Oh yeah.
Um, I'm curious, always curious with directing duos and how you divvy up the duties of a director between the two of you. And is there a certain aspect of the process that one of you really prefers and or is better at than the other, or do you just
No,
jump in?
yeah, no, we always say neither of us are specialists, we're both generalists. We both do everything 50/50 because we both like doing everything 50/50, and we feel like we're both I think equally good at all those parts of the process, and it's good to get better at it and get reps at everything. And some partnerships probably work in other ways where maybe someone is more interested in performance and someone is more interested in like, the visuals and talks to the DP or the technical side of things or post or whatever. But to us, it feels like any version of that is going to ultimately end in ruin. Like we work really hard to ensure that our partnership is very like egalitarian and everyone feels equally fulfilled and equal ownership over every part of the process because, there's the professional component of just making movies, right? And maybe there is some like, harsher way to do this, but also we want to make sure that we enjoy ourselves and that we're happy and that when we, at the end of the day, we're not resenting, hi Nala, we're not resenting one another, or feeling like we didn't get a bite at the apple as big as we wanted, you know. And we're always checking in with each other. And Bobby and I we're best friends. We met when we were 18. We were randomly assigned roommates at NYU, so we've had like so much time to be best friends before we ever started making movies together. And you know, so in some ways we're like each other's therapists too, you know, and it's all sort of mixed up in the same thing. So long way of answering a short question. We both do everything, and you know, our golden rule is just we want it to be an asset that there's two of us, not a liability for a production. You know, like we want anyone on set can come up to one of us and just get a green check mark and not have to ask the other one too, because we never would want it to slow the process down or make it so that it's annoying for department heads or for actors. And that's taken a while, film to film. It's a process we've refined, but we do feel like we're in a really good place with it. And yeah, I don't think either of us can imagine doing it any other way, or you know, making movies alone or with anyone else, nor do
Yeah,
we want to.
that would suck.
Yeah.
Well, all credit to the NYU housing lottery then in that case,
Absolutely. The
because
bursar, big
the
up to the
magic,
bursar.
As
yeah.
I said, we should be giving them like 10%. Not really. We're not going to.
Yeah.
No,
We're not gonna,
but
yeah, we've given NYU a lot more than 10%.
I can
Yeah, exactly.
imagine. I would imagine so.
We
You
haven't
know,
made that much.
I mean, so okay, so you're directing this movie. You have Jack Quaid in the lead, and he's done The Boys and Scream and all these other cool projects. And then you have Amber Midthunder, who, you know, fought the Predator in
Mhm.
Prey.
Mhm.
And you're also trying to balance everything in terms of, you know, what can you actually accomplish? So I'm curious. Was there any time on the set where someone in the cast was like really gung ho to do their own stunts, and you had to be like, "I'm so sorry, we can't do that."
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, everybody wants to do their own stunts. It's rare that you find somebody that, you know, really doesn't want to, you know, especially younger actors. I'm sure once you get older and you've had a couple more knee injuries, you're like, why don't you go ahead and step in there, stunt double? But at this stage where this is a huge opportunity for so many of these actors, where this is a really big movie for them, where they're stepping up into these, you know, big roles and having their real shot as action stars and everything. And so, you know, Ray and Jack specifically were like, you know, wanted to do a lot of their own stunts. But there's obviously a line there where, you know, there's certain things where it just doesn't make sense for us to, you know, throw Jack himself into the mirror or over the countertop or anything. We're gonna like be flying in the air and landing on your head. Like, it's just not worth it to the production, because if you wind up hurting yourself, we're completely screwed. Especially Jack. Like, Jack played in like 99% of the days that we were shooting, and so we could not handle going down because Jack was hurt. And so, you know, but luckily a lot of those decisions are made early on. It's not like you're on set and he's like, I want to do this, and then you have to talk him
Yeah.
out of it. Like, you know, we're working with our stunt teams, and they're in the gym with, you know, Stanimir and Kerry, our stunt coordinators, working on the fights. And it's at that stage that it's nice because we don't have to be the bad guy in that situation. That's Stanny, our stunt coordinator. You know, it's his ass if somebody gets hurt. You know what I mean? And so he's the one who's saying, I feel comfortable with you doing this, this, and this, but this one, Hristo, your stunt double, is going to have to step in for, because it's a complicated move and it's quite dangerous. And, you know, I don't think there was ever any real pushback from the actors on that. I think they would say, hey, can I do this? And Stanley would let them know either yes or no. And they were comfortable with that. And I think, you know, by the time you're actually shooting it, like when we're in there shooting the kitchen fight, and Jack's running around that kitchen island and expending so much energy, I think at that point you're thankful to have the stunt double kind of step in and take a rep for you, if only so that you can sit down and catch your breath. You know, it's a really physically taxing thing, shooting an action movie.
I certainly would be grateful for the stunt double. I can tell you that right
We're
now.
not doing any stunts, that's for sure.
No. I know we're coming up on the end of our time together, so I wanted to make sure I would ask because, again, you know, this movie is so much fun, and we get to the end of it, and I was like, you know, I could see this continuing. I would watch another one. So I gotta ask, could Nathan Caine return for a sequel?
Nathan Caine certainly could return for a sequel. We would love to be a part of it. People just need to go to the movie theater next weekend, and or I guess we can say this weekend at this point,
Yeah.
and buy some tickets and spread the gospel. You know, it just needs to do well enough that Paramount says, "Okay, good idea. We should do a sequel." But yes, we are super enthused about the idea. We'd love to return and work with this amazing cast again.
It's really wonderful to hear. And in the absence of that at this moment, what is next for you guys?
We've got a bunch of stuff coming up that we're having in various stages, none of which we're really at liberty to talk about. We've got another movie with the same producers at Infrared that we're really excited about. That's another action comedy that is a very different angle. That's all I'll say, and that we're really excited about. So hopefully we're back here talking to you in a year or two about that.
Well, I look forward to it and to seeing whatever you guys do next, because this one was so much fun. And I
Thank you so much.
thank you guys a lot.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah, have a good one.
All right, you too, man. Nice to meet you.